YouTube's plans for podcasting. The latest from Podnews.net with the Podcast Show, the new international festival for podcasting in London this May. We start today with an exclusive. YouTube is planning tighter integration, monetization, and analytics for podcasts. Despite no announcement from YouTube's Director of Podcasting Kai Chuck at Podcast Movement Evolutions last week, we've been sent an 84-page presentation produced by YouTube intended for podcast publishers. In it, 3 slides marked Looking Ahead allow us a view into what YouTube is planning. YouTube's looking at ingesting podcast RSS feeds directly, the slides suggest, with a new podcast's homepage to be at youtube.com/podcasts, a URL that doesn't work yet. Podcasts appear to be promoted with familiar square artwork thumbnails. YouTube's to feature audio ads too, both sold by Google but also by partners if they're large enough. YouTube's standard practice has been to share revenue with publishers, so we might expect perhaps revenue to be shared for podcast publishers as well. And YouTube will also supply analytics, particularly, they say, new metrics for audio-first creators. We might expect something aligning with the IAB guidelines, perhaps. And YouTube appears to be working with podcast attribution companies like Nielsen, Podtrack, and Chartable. Now, Chartable was bought by Spotify in February, so perhaps this slide is showing companies that YouTube have worked with rather than companies they might work with in future. Anyway, you'll see all 3 slides on our website at podnews.net, and we've contacted YouTube for comment. In other news, Podimo has bought Dag en Nacht, the largest podcast publisher in the Netherlands. Day and Night have over 60 shows. Some will be placed behind Podimo's monthly €5 paywall. Podwheels, powered by Radio Nemo, is set to produce podcasts for trucking professionals. 10-4 Good Buddy. Sports broadcaster Mike Francesca has launched the Mike Francesca podcast after saying he was initially hesitant to dive into podcasting because he didn't fully understand it. Kerning Cultures Network, a female-led podcast company from the Middle East, has signed with talent agency CAA. It's the first Middle East and North Africa podcast company to do so. Yvonne Schramm from Triton Digital joins Rain for a podcast business lunch today on how programmatic works, how it's priced, and its trends. It's at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can sign up in our show notes and our newsletter at podnews.net. And Spotify is no longer available in Russia. And in podcast news, Origins with James Andrew Miller is back for a new season, this time focusing on the story of popular cable TV channel HBO. It's produced by C13 Originals, part of Odyssey's Cadence 13, and all 5 episodes are available from today. The Antidote promises joy amid the dumpster fire, which is a welcome notion, hosted by Insecure comedy writers and producers Amy Aniobi and Grace Edwards. They share the culture that lights them up and activities that bring them joy. It launches today from APM Studios. And Petrified won a New York Festival's Radio Award for Drama Podcast in 2020, in spite of only having 6 episodes, and garnered rave reviews and gained legions of horror fans worldwide in the process. Season 2 is launched today, telling the chilling tales of ordinary people encountering the supernatural and their terrifying fates. This podcast is brought to you by The Podcast Show, the new international festival for podcasting in London this May. This 2-day business event has all kinds of people, including Julia White from Twitter, Alice Levine, Edith Bowman, and Munro Bergdorf. And they're just getting going. Get ready for another 250 names being announced in the coming weeks. You can book your day pass. It's just £55. You can use promo code PODNEWS for 20% off a limited number of passes. Give us the tenner later. We're a media partner. We'll be there. You can buy those passes with the code PODNEWS at thepodcastshowlondon.com. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories in full and see those YouTube clips, and subscribe at podnews.net.